Let me put it in perspective for you. We need, just because of the dimensions of demand, we need between 300,000 and 400,000 units net delivered to the marketplace every year.
Welcome. This is the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. This is where you'll learn strategies to help you achieve lifetime financial freedom through real estate investment. Your host, Rod Khleif, has owned over 2,000 homes and apartments, and he brings experts in all aspects of real estate investment and management onto the show. Now, here's your host, Rod Khleif.
Hey guys, before we start, I want to mention a couple of quick things. First being, if you like what you hear, subscribe to us on iTunes. And also, most importantly, I really want to hear what you think. If you have comments or questions or even suggestions for guests or topics you'd like to hear on the show, please let me know. You can email me directly at rod@rodkhleif.com. That's rod at rodkhleif.com. I'd love to hear from you. All right, let's get this party started. Our guest today is a real heavyweight in the multifamily industry. His name is Doug Bibby, and he's the president of the National Multifamily Housing Council. It's a large organization with over 1,100 firms that are involved in the multifamily industry. And, under his leadership, they get a lot done on Capitol Hill. They lobby and they promote research and exchange of information, and they advocate for this industry. And prior to being with the National Multifamily Housing Council, Bob spent 16 years as a senior officer with Fannie Mae. In fact, he was part of the top management team that's credited with the fantastic turnaround they had there that was chronicled in Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. Doug, we're very honored to have you on the show today.
Thanks, Rod. Appreciate being here.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. What makes apartments a strong investment today compared to other real estate?
Well, I think people have a much greater appreciation for the risk-adjusted returns that flow from apartments. I think when I took this job about 15 years ago, there was much less understanding at all levels. And to give you an example, the risk premium that was attached to multifamily versus other asset classes like retail and office was between 250 and 300 basis points, or 2.5 to 3% percentage points. And today, I think we have interest from all over the world in our sector, I think, which speaks to people's greater understanding that the asset class produces very consistent, predictable returns and throughout the cycles.
So what can you tell us about the current state of the multifamily industry?
Well, it's been very healthy. We did not overbuild during the bubble years, and then during the recession, no one could get financing. So we're still catching up with the demand in the marketplace. We picked up about 9 million renters since the recession. So it's trying to keep up with demand, which is coming from not just millennials, but it's also coming from downsizing baby boomers and still strong immigration coming into this country. So it's really getting supply to meet up with demand, and we're still catching up.
Okay. I see a lot of apartments going up in my community, and I hear it's the same all over the country. Are they meeting the demand? Do you think they're close to exceeding the demand, or do you think there's still room for more growth with new construction?
Well, let me put it in perspective for you. We need, just because of the dimensions of demand, we need between 300,000 and 400,000 units net delivered to the marketplace every year. We lose an estimated 125,000 units a year, mostly at the very low end of the marketplace, to obsolescence and demolition and other uses. So, you've got to be producing, as I said, you've got to be starting in the high 300s to 400,000 units a year and delivering well over 300,000. Last year was the first year that we got delivered even close to that, and the starts estimated for this year are going to be around 375 to 400,000, which is very strong. But we are not in jeopardy of overproducing anywhere, in my estimation. There are a couple of sub-markets in selected markets across the country where you're beginning to see a lot of properties coming on. But overall, nationally speaking, the stock is still woefully behind.
Okay. And how is rent growth? Is it trending up? What can you how can you speak to?
It's been on a very strong pace for the past I think 16 or 17 quarters or more of at least 4% growth. But I think it is moderating because of what we just talked about. You're getting more supply coming on the market, and that by definition, your economics 101,
sure.
Is going to moderate rents. But they're still strong. And I see it perhaps backing up a little bit this year, but still strong. Okay.
Now, obviously, you've got huge insights into the different pockets of the country. What markets do you feel? You mentioned there are a couple markets that could be reaching saturation. Could you tell us what those markets are?
Well, I think. Washington, D.C. is kind of held up as the poster child, but it is a market that is going through a tremendous diversification, and it is a very sought-after market. Politicians who leave office never leave. They just go to business here. And we have outstanding academic institutions from George Washington, Georgetown, and so on. And those are magnets for young talent. And so, I think there's still room for growth here. There are some who are concerned about it. There's some who are concerned about Houston, mostly because of the price of oil. But there are a lot of units being delivered in Texas, for example, in Dallas and Houston and Austin in particular. But Texas also leads the country in job growth. So there are 6 or 7 jobs coming onto the market for every unit being delivered. I don't worry about those situations. I worry about if there's 2 jobs for every apartment coming on. That is a worrisome situation, but I don't see that happening anywhere in the country.
Wow. Well, that's quite a statement. So there's opportunity throughout the country. Are there markets that have more vacancies than others that are that pop to the top of mind for you?
I think there are still markets that are recovering from speculation. Phoenix and Las Vegas are 2 that come to mind. That were just there was a lot of speculative building going on out there, and so there are a little bit. But even there, even Detroit has tight vacancies right now. So
really,
yes,
wow.
And Cleveland is going through incredible diversification and revitalization of their downtown area, and they're going to be hosting the Republican convention this coming summer. So anywhere you look, you're seeing a lot of downtown revitalization and interest in investment income coming into those downtown areas.
Well, that surprises me about Detroit. I know they've got, they've got a lot of things happening there, but I didn't realize that their vacancies were down.
Yeah, and there's some surprisingly strong submarkets there as well. I mean, I'm not saying it's out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination, but the Dan Gilberts of the world, the head of Quicken Loans, has been investing very heavily in the downtown core markets. We're also seeing great strength in the suburbs because the millennials, because there's so much higher-end product coming onto the market now that the millennials, some of them are getting priced out of the downtown areas where they prefer to live, and they're moving to the inner-ring suburbs where the price points are better for them.
Now, you mentioned that even some of the baby boomers are moving into the marketplace, and I know that the whole mindset for decades has been buy a home and live in a home, a single family home. Can you speak to what might be happening there with baby boomers?
Yeah, I think being one myself, what we're hearing about, it's all anecdotal because that's what we have to go on in this basis, but. What we're hearing is that it's a certain number of them just want to be where the action is, and because of this wonderful revitalization of our downtown areas that's going on and will continue to go on, more boomers are being attracted to where the action is. They don't want to go off to some distant exurb and live with a bunch of people like themselves. They want to be in a more vital environment. Then there's another group that want to be near their grandchildren, their children and their grandchildren. And so you're seeing some relocations going on there. And some people are monetizing their assets. I heard of a couple of instances. One of our members built 2 properties in the greater Phoenix area, and they anticipated that most of the renters were going to be millennials. Well, in fact, most of the renters were downsizing baby boomers who sold their properties in Michigan or Indiana or wherever it is, and wanted to move to the Sun Belt and rent. So,
wow.
So we're seeing, and it's not just an isolated market or two. We're seeing a tremendous amount of interest among the baby boomers, and it was a big surprise for all of us.
Yeah, that surprises me as well. That so they're just cashing, they're putting their money in the bank or in investments and renting instead of buying.
Right, it gives them more flexibility. Yeah, and some of them are renting to be near their kids and grandchildren.
Sure.
Yeah.
A lot of people are talking about an upcoming correction. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I've been hearing it too. This is a longer recovery period that is typical.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, if you look at the dynamics in the marketplace, the cost of financing, the availability of financing, the demand side of the equation, the amount of capital coming into the sector, and the fact that job growth, we're now, some economists are saying we're now at full employment. And if we see more income growth going forward, the fundamentals are strong.
Right.
So, you can say it's along in the cycle, but tell me where the fundamentals are weak, and then let me get worried about that. But right now, the fundamentals are so strong. I see, I think we're going to have a good year in 2016.
Okay. Yeah. You're absolutely right. I mean, the rates are fantastic for people wanting to get into this space right now or buy additional properties, assets.
Yeah, so, there's no shortage of capital. Equity investors or debt providers wanting to participate.
Right. So
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, please continue.
No, I was just going to say that we are a unique multifamily marketplace in the world. There is no other country that has it structured the way we do, where we're able to bring in capital from all over the world. And so we have the Canadians, the Chinese, the Norwegians, the Australians, the Israelis, and on and on and on, who are parking their money here and investing in real estate, investing in multifamily in particular.
Right. As a group, what are some of the challenges that you recognize as with your organization that apartment owners and operators are facing in this marketplace?
I think the biggest challenge that we face is the gap in the number of affordable units that are available to the public and those that need them. It's across the country, and there are some markets like New York and San Francisco where it's very, very big problem.
Right.
And to me, that's the problem we've got to solve, working together as private participants and with public sector entities. We've got to try to figure out how to work together to get more units that are affordable to people in middle incomes and lower incomes. That, to me, is a number one challenge that we face. We're seeing another challenge that's coming out of the regulatory environment. You're familiar with Basel III and also these high volatility real estate lending strictures that are out there. And what we're seeing very, very recently is a pullback in the lending community for construction lending. And so we're watching very, very carefully to see what dimensions that will take.
Do you think that's a thought process that they're thinking that because of all the construction that maybe there's some saturation? Do you think that's contributing to that, or is it something else? By the way, I have no idea what you just said about Basel III. I'm totally ignorant.
There are new banking regulations on the capital that you must hold against certain types of assets.
I see.
It's an international standard, but it applies to the United States lending institutions as well.
Oh, so it could be regulatory then. That's causing
it is. I think it's a combination of, in my view, ill-informed reaction to are we overbuilding, but there probably are some there. But I think it's more of a regulatory issue right now. Is sort of and then there was not wanting to have too many loans with one particular customer, for example. So we're finding our members are shopping their business more widely than they used to.
Okay. So are there any opportunities in the affordable housing space? I mean, obviously the construction sounds like there could be a pullback in construction financing, but are there value add or is that a market that maybe someone that's looking to get into the business or grow in the business can capitalize on?
Absolutely. I think that's the sweet spot of opportunity, and let me tell you why. We built a huge number of basically tax incentivized apartments in the late 70s through the mid 80s until the Tax Reform Act came out in 86. And so the stock in this country is older. 52% of the units that are out there are at least 30 years old. And my view is we have a great opportunity to make sure that stock is both preserved and then rehabilitated so that it can be used more broadly for renters. And so in every market, there are opportunities for people to either convert. I was just reading this morning about a converted industrial facility that's been converted to apartments. There's one in New York that was converted from an office building into apartments. So adaptive reuse, taking older assets and converting them or sprucing them up to make sure they're still usable for the price points that are desired out there. Lots of opportunity, in my view.
I agree. So when we're talking about sprucing up, what are some of the amenities that people like the millennials like versus maybe the baby boomers? Do you know any statistics there?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think what we're again, everything's anecdotal at this point.
Sure.
We don't have any longitudinal research that tell us these things, but.
Okay.
With the millennials, they don't have as many things as the boomers have. We boomers have accumulated all kinds of stuff over our lives, and we need more storage space, and the millennials don't. I mean, they're much more into renting anything they want to rent. They'll go on Airbnb to rent a place. They'll rent Uber. They'll call Uber. They'll rent zip cars. They'll rent wedding dresses. They don't accumulate, and so they don't have as much requirement for space, but they want connectivity. It has to be cutting edge, bleeding edge connectivity where they live, so that they can, all their types of games and all their types.
Internet connectivity.
Yeah, internet connectivity.
Okay. I thought for a minute you meant social connectivity.
Yeah, they did that too. Okay. And so we're looking at. Student housing is a great example for us of there are some of our members who are creating different kinds of apartments now where you have almost like a dorm approach with a common area and private bedroom bathroom where 4 apartments or maybe even 5 are sharing a common area. So they have their time together, they cook and they watch movies or whatever they want to do together, and then they have their own private rooms and baths.
Yeah, my daughter actually was in one just like that in Tampa. So I know exactly.
Yeah,
what you're talking about.
To me, I mean, we're learning from student housing on that as an example.
Yeah. That might actually work well for assisted living. But anyway, it might. And as a matter of fact, that's what's happening in that environment as well. But also, the price point for the millennials is much better in that environment. You're almost back to do in college is rent by the bed. And so that's one example. Yeah, that can be very lucrative for an operator.
Yep.
So you mentioned Airbnb. Is that having an impact on our industry?
Yes, it is. It's hard to say. There are some localities that want to clamp down on that. There are some who are evicting residents if they're not following their lease. There are others who are trying to figure out. Can they work with Airbnb? The hotel industry is up in arms about it.
Sure.
And so it is a violation of the lease. And so will we see a different kind of lease produced in the future? I don't know. Right now, we're watching it very carefully. Yeah.
It's one of those things that turns things on its ear.
Yep.
So shifting gears a little bit, what advice would you give an investor? This is a very global question, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. What advice would you give an investor looking to get started in investing in apartments?
Well, I think it's a very lucrative field if you do it right. And so what I would do, there's no substitute for homework, first of all.
Right.
Is studying the neighborhood and the adjacent neighborhoods. What are the patterns of development going on? What sort of public investment is being made there? What sort of private investment is being made there? And then there's also, but if it's, if that, for example, but also there's no substitute for just kicking the tires. If you're approached by a crowdfunding source saying, I'd like you to invest in in this apartment building in our neighborhood, and you don't go out and kick that tire, you're making a big mistake. You need to know what that asset looks like, when it was built, what condition it's in, is it wired, is it not wired. A lot of these older buildings really require quite some effort in retrofitting. And so, what are the requirements to bring it up to really the speed and to code? Those kind of questions. So I would say, number one, do your homework. Number two, kick the tires. Make sure you really understand the asset opportunity.
So this may be a difficult question to answer because there's so many, what's the word? So many things that could be affected, but are there any particular apartment renovations that you feel like offer the best ROI for an operator?
I think it depends on the target audience that you're going after.
Okay.
If you're going after millennials, as I said before, you have to have that building as wired and connected as you possibly can.
Okay.
There are both mandatory and discretionary retrofits you have to go through, basically. So
sure.
In some areas where there are energy efficiency mandates you have to follow.
So that means if you touch anything, you've got to bring it up to these energy efficient mandates.
Yeah.
Okay.
And particularly if you're building up to, for sure.
Oh, sure.
That's sort of. But other than that, I think just sprucing up the look outside, the landscaping, the exterior look, and when you come in, the feel there. You don't have to get into granite countertops and things like that, and energy efficient shower heads. But it's got to, for the millennials, it's got to have it's got to be wired to the nth degree, and for the boomers, I think as I said before, with all our possessions, you got to figure out what you can create for them so that they don't have to give away or sell everything they have.
Yeah. Wow. So back to the millennials for just a second. Are there any things you can do to enhance their social experience? Because I'd heard that they're very social. Anything? Yeah,
that's where we're learning. I think not just from student housing, but also from the hotel industry, and creating common areas and opportunities for them to interact with each other. And that's why you've seen the average size. Most of the units that have been built recently have been studios and ones. In the past, you had a much better balance between studios, ones, and twos. But you're seeing, there have been fewer twos and threes built, and very few threes built. So
is that an opportunity?
Yeah, I do. I think so. Absolutely.
Okay.
And don't forget that with the housing downturn and the number of people who were foreclosed on,
right,
a huge number of people have been renting single family houses.
Right.
And those typically are coming with 3 bedrooms or more, and so that is attracting a clientele with kids. Maybe some of those houses are located in better school districts, so those are considerations as well. But I do think that I know some of my members right now are looking at increasing the number of threes that they're developing or redeveloping.
Yeah, I would think that would be an opportunity. Okay, so a couple more questions. What do you see some of your operators doing that are most effective for marketing their properties to potential tenants? That they buy a property that they want to reposition. Any cutting edge strategies or just global advice on marketing? Well,
I think finding the right social media sources, using the listing, services, and so are fine. They're good. And I think additionally, though, to give a little extra buzz, using social media channels can really expand the universe of interested parties. I found
any better than others, or?
That's a slippery slope for me.
Okay, fair enough. That was a boomer response right there. Okay.
You're right.
All right.
Exactly.
Okay. One last question, really. What are the best strategies that you've seen to retain tenants, or what advice would you give an operator for, because it's so important to keep your tenants, because turnover is just such a huge expense. It kills your NOI. So retaining tenants. So speak to retaining tenants.
Well, I think it's always a challenge because people are mobile. They're looking for jobs, and I think being high touch without being intrusive, and by that I mean, don't email them all day long, but be extremely responsive and service-oriented. So if you get a service request, fill it in a very timely fashion. Make sure that you reach out and touch the resident a number of times, making sure that they feel loved.
Okay.
There's no secret sauce or formula on this thing, but being visible to them, being attentive to them, dropping them a note saying, "Hey, we're going to have a social, a social hour this night," or whatever it is. Just making them feel wanted and included.
Okay. Listen, Doug, I really appreciate your valuable time, and you've added incredible value today, and thank you so much for all that you do for our industry.
Thank you. I appreciate being on.
Right.
Thank you for listening to the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and then take a moment to visit iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and review. For more resources to connect with us further, please visit our website at lifetimecashflowpodcast.com. Tune in next week for our next show.